Good Monday, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for October the 3rd. Today is Monday, October the 3rd, and we are reading together in Revelation chapter 20. We only have 3 more days of readings here in the Revelation, and then we'll conclude with that, and we will have concluded with our read throughout the entire New Testament. And obviously, previously we concluded our read through the Old Testament prophets. So if you're keeping track at home of the text through which you have read through in their entirety in a succinct time, not just, oh, I'm sure at some point in my life I read the entire New Testament, but in a concerted effort to read through these sections of the biblical text. You have done that as of Wednesday if you've been with us the entire time, and I thank you for your participation. I thank you for your encouraging words and for the conversations we've been able to have about the daily Bible readings. I appreciate them very much, and I hope that you have been blessed in our reading together. But before we hand out the completion certificates, we need to make sure that we do complete this reading in the Revelation. So let me go ahead and get Revelation 20 up on the screen for us for today. Again, you've heard me say on a number of occasions that what we're seeing in these final chapters of Revelation is not something that should be led in a linear fashion, but something that should be read as being in cycles. There have been numerous defeats that have been expressed and written here. I think that's all of these are just tying together the defeat that Satan and his evil forces and those who align with him are going to experience on the day of judgment. Well, here, if anybody wants to argue about and disagree with the previous ones being retellings of the day of judgment of the last day, okay, that's fine. I mean, that's a discussion we can have. But here in chapter 20, I'm pretty sure we would just about all agree that this is it. This is the end for sure. Whether or not the previous ones are different ways of describing this event or not, I think we'd all agree that chapter 20 of Revelation is the end of the Satan's reign and terror upon the people. For we're going to see at the end that he is thrown into the lake of fire. We know Jesus spoke about that in the Gospels about the lake of fire being prepared for the devil and his angels. And here is the time for them and all those aligned with them to be thrown into that. So let's read that together here in Revelation chapter 20, beginning in verse number 1. Then I saw, this is John saying, he said, I saw an angel coming down from heaven, holding the key to the abyss and a great chain in his hand. Remember that we previously saw this angel described, I think in I'm guessing chapter 8. That's my guess. Chapter 7. We previously saw an angel in chapter 7 having such a key, and that being a key to the abyss. And we see that here as well. I think it's again the same angel, the same key, the same abyss. And excuse me. And here we see again, I think just these things being connected together. Apologize, I can't hardly talk this morning, but these things all being connected together in some way. So as you sit down and you read through the Revelation again, don't read it necessarily linearly, as we've said, but read it as somewhat retellings of the same things described in different ways, and try to connect as best you can the various characters. I use that word accommodatively, various figures within the story and what they're doing, and try to connect that together to be able to see the picture as a whole. But anyways, getting back to the text itself, again, he's holding the key to the abyss, a great chain in his hand. He sees the dragon, the ancient serpent, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. He threw him into the abyss, closed it, and put a seal on it so that he would no longer deceive the nations until the 1,000 years were completed. And after that, he must be released for a short time. Then I saw thrones and people seated on them who were given authority to judge. I also saw the souls of those who had been beheaded because of their testimony about Jesus and because of the word of God, who had not worshipped the beast or his image, and who had not accepted the mark on their foreheads or their hands. They came to life and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. The rest of the dead did not come to life until the 1,000 years were completed. This is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy is the one who shares in the first resurrection. The second death has no power over them, for they will be priests of God and of Christ, and they will reign with him for 1,000 years. When the 1,000 years were completed, Satan was released from his prison and will go out to deceive the nations at the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them for battle. Their number is like the sand of the sea. They came up across the breadth of the earth and surrounded the encampment of the saints, the beloved city. Then fire came down from heaven and consumed them. The devil who deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet are, and they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. Then I saw a great throne and one seated on it. Earth and heaven fled from his presence, and no place was found for them. I also saw the dead and great, and the dead, the great and the small, standing before the throne, and books were opened. Another book was opened, which is the book of life. The dead were judged according to their works by what was written in the books. Then the sea gave up the dead that were in it, and death and Hades gave up the dead that were in them. Each one was judged according to their works. Death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. This is the second death, the lake of fire, and anyone whose name was not found written in the book of life was thrown into the lake of fire. That's Revelation chapter 20. So we have, again, the great enemy, the great adversary of God and his people, being the devil, being described here within this text. He's described as a dragon, the ancient serpent, who is the devil and the Satan, and he is bound and thrown into the abyss for 1,000 years. Now, there's a lot going on here as far as trying to understand exactly what's being described. We have 1,000 years here mentioned. Questions we need to ask, not necessarily answers I'm going to give, but there's questions we need to ask ourselves are, number one, what is this abyss? Number two, what is this 1,000 years? Number three, is this 1,000 years literal or figurative? Number four, are all of the 1,000 years that are mentioned within this text, are they all representing the same 1,000 years? Those are just questions that are good to ask, and we have to decipher those things and figure out, okay, what exactly do these things mean? And in seeking to do that, and in being responsible in seeking out those answers, again, not trying to appease some system, but allowing the text to be read within its own context and to tie together different places where the same things are mentioned. I think we can come to a pretty good understanding of what's going on there. And again, that's not the scope of this particular read that we're doing, but that's just something for you to think about as we're reading through the Revelation, and as you might go back and do some study on your own in this particular text. But at the end of the day, what we have here is the judgments. The judgment, there's one sitting on the throne, I believe that representing Jesus, and there's books that are opened, and the judgment takes place. This chapter focuses on those who are negatively judged, those who have failed to be faithful to God. They're described here as the ones, let me find it again. They are the ones that, let's see. They're the ones okay, so the good ones are described, those who get to reign with Christ, are described as those who had not worshiped the beast or its image, and who had not accepted the mark of their on their foreheads or their hands. Okay, so those who had remained loyal to God, those who had maintained faithfulness to Yahweh and to Jesus as King, they are the ones who came back to life and get to reign with Christ for 1,000 years. Again, whatever 1,000 years is, I'll let you consider that for yourself. I have my ideas what that is, but I'll let you decide for yourself as well. If you have questions, though, please feel free to ask, and I'll be happy to just share and discuss that with you. Again, I'm not trying to be cryptic or anything. It's just, again, I don't want to get caught up in the weeds of really interpreting these things, and that's just, again, that's just not the scope of this reading, this study. Additionally, or I guess on the other side, then, if the ones who get to be resurrected and reign with Christ for 1,000 years, if they're the ones who have not submitted to the beast, have not aligned themselves with evil and wickedness, who have not received the mark of the beast on the forehead, on their hand, then we need to understand that those who are judged, anyone, this verse 15, and anyone whose name was not written in the book of life was thrown into the lake fire. That would be those who have then worshipped the beast and his image. They are the ones who had accepted the mark on their forehead or on their hands, and who is and again, they're thrown into the lake of fire because they have aligned themselves with the beast, with the evil, with the system of rebellion against God, and the one who leads it being the devil and the Satan, the adversary. Those things, this death or this place, this lake of fire, is where death and Hades are thrown into. So death, the being the last enemy that Jesus is going to conquer in 1 Corinthians 15. Also Hades, the place where those who have been rebellious have been separated from God in this place. All of it is thrown into this lake of fire. All of it is cast into it, and reminds me of what we saw in a previous chapter. Let me see if I can find it real fast here. The idea of the smoke continuing to rise up from it. I don't see it right off the top of my head right here real fast, but there's the smoke continuing coming up from it, that this is just a place of let's phrase it this way: everything that is good about being with God and every blessing that comes with being with God is not here. It's not here at all. Everything that we get to enjoy by being a part of God's people is absent, and that absence is amplified in a negative, tormenting type of way. And yet, here's what I want to take away from this. Here's just the thought that comes in my head. Those who refuse to dwell, those who refuse to be in God's presence through faithfulness on this earth, those who live wicked lives, those who object to God, those who are not willing to conform to the will of God, those who are not willing to live up to the image in which they were created in the beginning, it is only natural for them to no longer be in God's presence for eternity. And if we're not willing to accept and to seek to be in God's presence now, then again, it's only natural to not be in his presence in eternity. So the question then for us is, well, what are we doing? Are we living in such a way that we desire God's presence among us? Do we desire that? And are we living in such a way that we are preparing ourselves to be able to have God's presence be with us? If we're not doing that, if we'd rather worship the beast or worship his image, or be those who receive the mark, and again, the idea there is that we align ourselves with that which is against God, that our allegiance is not to God, but is to the forces that are against him. If we do that here, then there should be no expectation for us to enjoy glory in eternity. So really, a lot of what that comes down to is we're going to get Romans chapter 6:23, especially comes to mind, that we will receive the wages for which we have lived. If we live in sin, then we will receive the wages of death, and death being apart from God for eternity. But we ought to be so thankful for his mercy and for his grace that he extends to us the free gift of eternal life, that his grace extends to us life, and that we come to have that life through faith in Jesus Christ. What does faith in Jesus Christ look like? Does it look like just believing something or expressing a thought? Or is it all encompassing of who we are? I believe it certainly is all encompassing of who we are. Not only what we think, but also what we do will show the faith that we have. And that is the proper response to God's grace. So may we appreciate God's grace, and may we live in God's grace through living faithful lives before him, so that we do not endure this judgment that is described here in Revelation chapter 20, that we will not be counted as those who did not have our names written in the book of life and who are cast into the throne, into the lake of fire for all eternity with death and with Hades, with the devil and all of his wicked forces. Let's avoid that. Let's avoid that by appreciating God's grace and responding appropriately to it through faith in his Son. I appreciate you tuning in for this reading today. Again, there's just so much. I have to really try hard in these readings. I've had to try really hard in these readings of Revelation to not go into the weeds. Again, not because I don't want to, but just because it's not the scope of this reading and this effort. Maybe in the future, we can do a study through the Revelation and hash some of this stuff out. But for now, I appreciate your patience. I hope that the reading that we have been doing over the last 3 or so weeks has been useful to you, and that it has given you some things to think about. There's been some challenges to you that you can use to sharpen your faith and really affirm who you are in Jesus and who you align yourself with by what you believe and by what you do. Again, have a great rest of your Monday. Looking forward to reading with you again tomorrow from Revelation chapter 20. We get to the good part now. We get through all that difficulty, all the violence and the destruction and the judgment, and now we get to settle in on the two really beautiful texts that conclude the Revelation, speaking about the new heavens and the new earth, the eternity that awaits those who are righteous and those who have put their faith in Jesus. Really looking forward to reading that with you over the next couple of days. And just a reminder, once we finish up with these, tomorrow and Wednesday, on Thursday, we're going to begin reading through Job, and we're going to read through Job, Proverbs, and Ecclesiastes to finish out the year. And also, I will work right now after we get done. I meant to do this weekend, I forgot. I want to put together the little schedules, the little half sheet schedules. I'll print those out, and you can have those at the building on Wednesday night if you like to keep them in your Bible or hang them up on your fridge or something, so you can know what we're reading on that